Hello, everyone. We are back with the Kilo Talk podcast. Today, we are joined by the president of the West Virginia powerlifting team, Matt McGuire. We're going to dive into everything WVU powerlifting today, and kind of look at where the club is heading next, and what can we look out for as far as them on the national scale. So, how you doing, Matt?
I'm doing pretty good. Had a lousy day as far as lifting goes, but figured out I'm not going to be unemployed this summer, so I'm feeling pretty good right now.
There you go. So why don't you start off by telling the listeners a little bit about yourself?
So I've been elected president for this upcoming school year. I've been with WVU powerlifting for 2 years now. I competed with the team last February at Drug Tested Collegiate Nationals for the USPA. I totaled not super impressive 11:57 at 220. This year, while Wes was doing my coaching, we were planning on doing a state meet here in West Virginia, where I was hoping to hit somewhere around the mid-1300 mark. However, that unfortunately got canceled, so I'm still sitting here with my low 300 Wilks trying to lead a powerlifting team.
I think you're well on the way to that total, though. What were you looking at? A 600-pound deadlift?
Yeah, we were looking at 600. I hit a decently easy 573 in training, and we still hadn't even started to drop the volume.
Yeah, definitely. You definitely would have hit that, and we'll be able to come back. And I guess you can continue. When do you plan on competing again?
The plan right now is to compete in late September for the USPA bar fight. That's going to be my last meet with the USPA before I try to transition to the USAPL with hopefully the rest of our team.
Yeah, that's right. That's right.
I'm hoping to break the 1400 barrier at that meet.
Awesome. So real quick, how'd you get started in powerlifting?
I'd been interested in strength training since, I guess, my sophomore year of high school. I was kind of notorious for just program hopping every few weeks. I've historically had some bad training ADD, but eventually I was browsing Instagram and saw our team's page and saw that you guys were a lot of strong lifters, and so I just reached out to the team my sophomore year and started to get involved. I didn't really initially have any plans to compete, but you guys sort of swayed me to shoot for the USPA Nationals, and I've been involved with the sport ever since.
Yeah, definitely. And that's awesome, for sure. So I guess before we kind of jump into more about where you think the club is heading and just collegiate powerlifting in general, our important news for the week actually involves Nick. So Nick, you're going to jump into the 2020 USAPL Raw Nats on October 7th at Daytona Beach. So that's very exciting news, and kind of just tell everyone a little bit of what made you make this decision.
Oh man. So yeah, like, first of all, yes, it's true. I will be doing Raw Nationals, and I'm really excited to compete and get out totaled like a bunch of 18-year-olds. Like I was gonna do this April anyways. But I had no intention of doing Raw Nats because it was kind of like a weird thing where I said, like, I don't think I could hit, like, I wouldn't have hit the qualifying total at Collegiate Nationals this year. So I don't think I should go because, like, it's a more of a, like, you know, I deserve to be there type thing. Then last Tuesday, Dana, who was on the episode last week, told me to do Raw Nationals, like, and we were just like kind of chatting on the side. And at that point, I had a few to drink already, so I was like, you know what, fuck it, why not? And
we'll go ahead and crack another one for that.
So I just said, like, yeah, I was like, okay, let me get home, like, let me wake up tomorrow and like see whether like this is something I'd actually like want to pursue. Then next day at the gym, two of the people on the team, Ron McKillop and Dan Shaver, we were just chatting, like, you know, just BSing. And I can't remember what was said, but we all just got really hyped up at the fact that there were no qualifying totals for Raw Nationals. And I remember just leaving the gym, like, okay, we're sending it. Like, we're all going to do Raw Nats this year. We're just like, we're going to be the last place in every weight class, but like, you know, why not? This is the 1 year, like, I get to do it with everyone. So I went from, that's like, awesome, vehemently against doing Raw Nationals to like being really hyped up to do Raw Nationals.
Yeah, and I mean, one thing we kind of want to point out is like Nick, you've been around the qualifying total anyway. So obviously, with kind of what's going on in the world right now, people have kind of not been able to train, so they've gotten waived those totals, so they can still have a very big and competitive meet. But I mean, I fully expect you to have a great meet and be competitive. So it's a cool experience that not a lot of people get to have. So we really look forward to kind of following that. And I know Nick and I have been talking about a couple things to kind of show everyone what's going on in his prep. So we're hoping to have that here soon. But I'm excited to follow you through that.
Thank you. Yeah, the goal is to this will be probably my last meet as a junior. Possibly Collegiate Nationals 2021 would be my, like, even though there's no junior class, but this will probably be my last like big meet as a junior. So my goal is to hit the original qualifying total in the junior class, just so I could lie to people and say like, oh look, I actually hit it, but you know, I never got to do it in the meet.
Yeah. What's that total, just so everyone knows?
1466.
Okay.
My kilo math, like mental math, ain't that good, so I want to say it's like 680 something, 670 something.
Okay. That's awesome. I definitely think you'll be on pace to hit that for sure, and very exciting news. Maybe I can head down to Daytona Beach with you and help you compete. But problem is, it's probably going to be in the middle of the week. Why aren't you doing it, Matt?
I've already paid for a meet with the USPA around that time, so I'm just going to go ahead and roll with that.
Okay. Well, so I guess the next thing I kind of wanted to talk about is kind of jump into more of like what collegiate powerlifting is going to look like. So as we kind of get all these members from different teams on, we kind of like to hear where you see collegiate powerlifting going in the next few years. And do you think there will be, well, let's just start out with that. Where do you think, what direction do you think collegiate powerlifting is heading, Matt?
It's sort of tough one where I'm new to the scene on the national level, but I really think we're going to see some continued growth for the next several years. I mean, it's powerlifting as a spectator sport is never going to be huge, but I think we've really like never seen a period of growth like what we've seen right now in the sport, just where so many people are interested in joining and getting involved. And I mean, we're also starting to see teams with things like full funding for some of their athletes, and I think the sport's going to continue to grow on the base level from people coming into the sport, and also on the competitive level, whereas what's being offered, we're seeing, I guess, a better talent pool.
Yeah, I completely agree. I think we've seen a lot of growth. I don't know how much the COVID situation will kind of slow down some of that collegiate growth, but I think if that doesn't cause any problems, I see these clubs growing even more. I know when we're kind of on Instagram, we want to try to follow all the collegiate clubs so we can kind of stay in touch with what they're doing. And there's many clubs that have just started out in the last couple of years, and they're starting to grow members kind of like similar to we did, or we were able to. So I can definitely see a lot of growth here in the future. Do you believe that we'll see a increase in some of these fully funded clubs that you talked about? So we're looking at like the Midlands and some of the other universities we spoke of during the rankings. They have their own training facilities. They tend to get a lot of support from the universities. Do you think there'll be an increase in that, like opportunities for maybe West Virginia University to become more of a fully funded team, or do you still think schools will continue to struggle?
I think in our case at WVU, it's a little hard to see us in that sort of situation where we operate through the Club Sport Federation. That sort of thing is kind of unprecedented, I suppose, but I could definitely see a few more teams coming out with things like their own facility and scholarships. And I mean, perhaps even we could manage to wing our own facility in the future if we could get a building through the school as we just continue to procure more equipment over the years.
So I have a little bit of an interesting opinion on this. And one team that I think I forgot, or like I failed to mention in the past in this regard is Georgia Tech. And I wouldn't say they're sponsored, but they do get some help from like Citadel Nutrition and all that stuff. And they train at like Citadel's private gym, and then like teams like Midland, which I think a lot of people say is like the gold standard for collegiate powerlifting, like Missouri Valley University or Missouri Valley College, like they're getting this funding. So maybe in the near future we won't see a huge increase in full funding, and like maybe we'll never see something happen like Midland where it's actually like a varsity sport. But I do think that the collegiate powerlifting scene is like a very lucrative market. And Johnny Candido kind of touched on this, and I'm kind of paraphrasing, taking it out of context, but I swear there's a purpose to it. So he recently turned, I think, 27 or 28, and he mentioned that he has a few more years left of like being able to care about, lifting weights before life responsibilities kick in, like getting married, like starting a family, all that stuff that historically will take you away from your hobbies and your passions. And that's not necessarily a bad thing, because you obviously have other priorities in life. But why I think that collegiate powerlifting is such a big market right now is because we're in a time of our lives where, we can focus on something like this. And outside of class, like this is something that we can do for fun. So I could definitely see like big companies like SBD, like maybe not fully funding, but sponsoring teams or sponsoring different athletes from different teams and making that kind of the centerpiece of their sponsorship. Or hell, just even, handing out gear to teams and like helping them out in some way. But I think we will see an increase in that in the future.
So I'm going to fight back with you a little bit on this one, Nick. I get what you're saying as far as maybe these private companies coming in and helping out these universities, because you are right. It is a very lucrative sport. It's almost something like very similar you see maybe like golf and things like that, where everyone has to have multiple different accessories, multiple different pieces of equipment. But I do think the issue we're going to run into in the future is the USAPL is not very friendly to smaller companies, and they're just not. That's not any surprise to anyone. That's very commonly known that a lot of these smaller end gear companies, as far as wrist straps, belts, I think even some of the shoes, I'm not sure on that, even t-shirts, they're not very good at kind of accepting these smaller companies in. They expect a lot of money up front for them to be on the approved list. And I think what that will cause in the future is a lot of these smaller companies that do have money to give these collegiate teams, why would they support collegiate teams when they're only focused in a federation that they can't be represented in? Okay. So that's my kind of pushback on the gear companies themselves. Not saying it couldn't be a possibility, but when you have companies as big as like Pioneer, which I mean, to me seems like a very successful company, they're not going to get in the USAPL because it's too much money. They're not going to go, other than maybe just because the owner's a great guy, they have no reason to go and start supporting these collegiate teams. So I think you will struggle with that. But with that being said, I do believe that what we're seeing a trend kind of in the past of these small universities receiving funding because their university realizes how big and how lucrative this sport can actually be. I think that's going to continue. I still believe if we're looking over the next 5 years, I think the teams that will have the fully funded clubs will be the smaller schools that aren't even on the map currently. So that's where I do think there'll be an opportunity for that. But I struggle with believing that the gear companies will really support the collegiate teams that much just because of the way it's kind of the scene set up right now.
That's actually a very valid point that I didn't actually consider. I mean, I don't have any argument against that. That's very true. And I think the only thing I can think off the top of my head right now that would kind of counter that is if, like, speaking from like if I'm thinking as a business owner right now, if I was a smaller company, like I would not be very interested in like sponsoring or giving away items to like a mass group of people at the time.
Mm-hmm.
But that could be like a whole nother episode in itself. So
yeah,
let's not dive that down that rabbit hole.
It's something very interesting to think about, but we kind of pushed Matt out of that question, I guess. So let's turn it back.
I was kind of thinking, where do you think these small teams, like, or the smaller schools, what do you think is actually going to incentivize them to want to sort of, fully fund more facilities and their lifters and things like that, given the fact that since outside organizations host the meet, there's really no way for them to get a stream of revenue from sponsoring those lifters, like the schools themselves.
Yeah, that's an interesting question you kind of proposed there, Matt. And the reason why I said that was just based off the past rankings that we looked at. A lot of these schools are smaller, like I said. And what's very unusual that we found when we kind of dove into a little bit of research is a lot of these universities fund very unique sports anyway, kind of sports that are small niche sports. Like I think Midland, Nick, correct me if I was wrong, I think you're the one that told me this, has a collegiate esports team that receives all kinds of funding, and they're very competitive in the esports scene. And also, if you kind of jump over and look at like esports as a whole, and a lot of the different Overwatch and Counter-Strike leagues and things like that, all the schools are small that are at the top of the collegiate level. So it's very interesting. I believe that the reason why that's a case is it's just these schools can't go have a football team or a successful football team. They can't afford that. They can't generate their success and make kids want to go there because of that. But what they can do, and I can speak a lot of this because of Amoret being part of the acrobatics and tumbling culture, or like or scene in collegiate, all their schools are small as well. And that being said, is because they can have that little niche and they can recruit kids to come in, very good athletes and very good kids in school to come into these smaller schools and draw them there that they wouldn't have. And that's going to ultimately lead back to tuition money. It's better than them having nothing when they can't really afford to fund a football team. Now, we kind of know that powerlifting can be very expensive. So I just think they're the only ones doing it, but they still can generate a lot of very good students to come into their university because of this. And that's my belief anyway.
I would almost agree. And I really don't have any counter to that because, I mean, if you look at the schools that are fully funded, like let's go back to Midland because we like to pick on them and they're a very easy example. But in terms of their varsity sports league and their whole, like the way they view it, it's very, very progressive, right? So before I came into powerlifting, I had never even heard of Midland University in my entire life. And it wasn't until I got into powerlifting that I saw, every single year, these college kids from this small ass school were just putting up insane numbers. And they were at the top of the country, the world, and they were just the team to beat every single year. But then I saw they also had an esports team, like you said, which is, kind of scratched my head a little bit, not because I don't think esports is hard or competitive, because it very much is. It's just, what kind of administration do you have to make that happen and make it happen successfully, right? Like if you went to any Big Ten school, like let's say you go to Ohio State and they announce tomorrow that there will be like a varsity esports team, there would be a lot of hell raised for that. And and you'll have people trying to make like cases from both sides. But I think it also comes down to the type of culture that school has. So I'm kind of going off on a tangent here, and maybe what I just said was completely unrelated, but yes, you see a lot of these smaller schools do kind of these niche sports because I think generally they're more progressive.
Yeah, I agree completely. I think there's a lot of factors that lead into it, but that's just kind of what the trends we're seeing for sure. Okay, so let's jump back into more. I kind of want to wrap back around to the actual West Virginia University powerlifting team as a whole. Now, this is something that Nick and I talk a lot about, being that he was the president last year. I've been the vice president for multiple years, founding member, so it's something we're very passionate about. But we have we really don't have anything to do with it all anymore. We're helping them kind of with the transition, but it's basically been handed over to Matt now and then our new officers. So what we really want to do with this episode is kind of dive into what you're thinking the team kind of looks like as a whole in 2020 or 2020 to 2021. So to start this off, I just want to kind of ask you a question with all the COVID stuff going on. What are some of the challenges you're expecting to face in the 2020 to 2021 school year, Matt, as the president?
I'm hoping that COVID isn't a huge challenge for us coming up. We're planning on being on campus next year, and the facility that we train at's already been open. We're seeing several of the members who are staying in town still training there. But I suppose one challenge is to sort of work out some more, I guess, fluid would be the right word, practices for our teams in the terms that I'll have a way to ensure that our community stays together if something comes up with the second wave and we all have to go home for the remainder of the semester after a certain point. So just some way to encourage membership involvement and make sure that our members stay fit throughout the rest of the school year if for whatever reason we can't train together again. But I'm being optimistic about the situation and hoping that we can hold team practices like we'd always hope to do and do things like hold the meet that we do in our school's recreation center every year, and just be able to grow for the next year so that after I'm graduated, our team has a steady future.
Yep, that's awesome. So one thing you kind of pointed out there, I kind of want to bring back up. If for some reason school were to be canceled in the fall, and again, I'm like you, I'm very optimistic about the situation. There's a good chance that a lot of these local gyms are still going to be open. I don't see West Virginia gyms closing. They might be if it gets significantly worse, but I think there's just a better chance of the university closing and not the gyms. What are some ideas you really have maybe to kind of keep the team involved through the fall, like together as far as training wise, even though they might be thousands of miles apart? Do you have any ideas currently on how maybe you would do that?
So over the course of the last year, you and Nick sort of implemented the system where team members were incentivized for coming to team trainings and things on a consistent basis. So I think finding some way to sort of continue that practice through distance would be a good way to promote a sense of community among the team still. Things like having members maybe, I don't know, share training logs and have things like Zoom meetings where new members who were generally relying on their team members' help to figure out what they're doing in this sport, where they could go and ask questions. I think holding some things like that would be helpful. Just really trying to find a way to make us feel as close together as we can as a team while we're being distanced.
Definitely. I couldn't agree more about that. Do you got anything to add to that, Nick?
No, I think that's a pretty solid answer.
Yeah, definitely. And it'll be interesting to see kind of what the fall holds for sure. So we kind of spoke about some of the challenges. What are some things that you maybe plan to put in place to elevate West Virginia University as a whole in your presidency?
Yeah, so right now, our team as a whole, we're facing a pretty big transitionary period. A lot of our members who were with the team when it started are going to be graduating. So it's mostly this group of new lifters that we have coming into the next year. So my biggest goal is to implement changes that make the sport easily accessible and desirable for new members to join and actually, become invested in. So one of the big things that I want to focus on is getting lifters who haven't been involved with the team involved. So that really come from things like spending a lot of time at our student rec center, talking to individuals who seem like they're interested in strength training that could be introduced to powerlifting, and also trying to make our facility more accessible. We work out at a gym currently that's about 20 minutes away from campus, and given the parking situation at WVU, it's not typical for freshmen to have vehicles. So I'd like to implement some sort of a carpool system in place where freshmen and other members who can't drive can easily get to the facility to train with the team. On top of that, I'd say the most major change I want to make as a president is shift our culture more so away from a USPA-based culture to a USAPL-based culture, so we can have team members all working towards the common goal of 2021 Collegiate Nationals and beyond.
Definitely. That's a good point. Something that we were kind of back and forth on in the past, like all through this club, kind of from the beginning, and we've just gotten such great support from Johnny Lane and the USPA. And obviously, when we first started out, we didn't even have the funding to maybe do something like the USAPL Collegiate Nationals. But it would not be fair for the club and the collegiate athletes that come in to not strive to compete against the best of the best. And that's truly what the USAPL Collegiate Nationals are. So I think that's a great point. One thing I want to point out is, Matt, did you listen to our episode last week? You don't have to lie if you didn't.
Yeah, I'm going to be honest, Wes. I haven't been an active listener lately.
Okay, that's fine. But Dana Bloomfield got on here and spoke with us a little bit, and she's the vice president of the Penn State Powerlifting Club. And one thing that she pointed out that we spoke about in the past, which I think would also help you a little bit with your carpool situation, is establishing a mentee-mentor system. So I know you're a West Virginia IE student, and that's something that we have. So you've had some experience being a mentee. I was a mentee, and then this past year I was able to be a mentor to a student. Is this something that you think maybe would work well with West Virginia Powerlifting, kind of implementing that program to kind of share ideas or like carpool, like you're saying, which I've thought there's been a huge challenge with in the past. I remember when like guys like Nick Onega and Jaden were part of the club and they were freshmen, they just had to ask me at any time and I'd go pick them up, and it's kind of dropped off here lately. But do you think this is something that you might implement in the future?
Yeah, definitely. I think a mentor-mentee system could be really valuable for us. And on top of that, if we can match the mentees with mentors that they where their schedules would go well together, that could sort of help address the transportation situation as well. I really think that one of the biggest barriers to entry in powerlifting is not really being sure what steps to take to get involved. I mean, like as a team, there's no standard coaching for our members. Everybody doesn't run the same program. And so somebody who's seen the sport and thinks it looks interesting, they can't just, hop right in and know what's going on. They need somebody who's more experienced to sort of show them the way to get strong.
Definitely. I completely agree with that.
I'm going to jump in and kind of talk about this, and because I remember like kind of pushing for this, and not that like I'm upset it didn't work out, because I think there was a lot of things we could have done differently, but I think a mentor-mentee system only works if you go all in with it. So I know I completely half-assed it I'd say we tried to implement it, and because I was personally hoping that we would establish like mentor-mentee pairs, and then it would just take care of itself from there. So what I would kind of recommend this year for really any team wanting to implement that is like create some kind of follow-up system where you can kind of, I wouldn't say track, because I think that has the wrong connotation to it, but kind of monitor like, how the mentor and mentee pairs are doing, and be a little bit more involved like in making sure that transition is smooth.
Yeah, I agree. And here's just a kind of an idea here. The West Virginia Industrial Engineering Department has this program in place and had it in place for years. And we do kind of weekly assignments, obviously, because it's part of our grade. So we have a topic we kind of talk about each week with our mentee mentor about anything from life to finding internships to school, things like that. And obviously, we are responsible for submitting an assignment. I don't know if you really need to go all that way, but it could be something you kind of implement into your incentive program that we've put in place with the attendance, is maybe you do a similar thing where you assign the mentee mentors like a assignment every week, maybe just something to talk about, sit down and chat about. It could be programming related, could be first meet related, anything. And then maybe they could submit something back to you, some sort of feedback saying, hey, we talked about this. This was kind of our ideas. And you can add it into the program you have now. So we've had this point system over the last year where we really, and I don't want to dive too much into this because we have a question that kind of talks about it. But it could be a point added to your point system if you do that weekly. And that might be an idea, or bi-weekly, something like that. Because there are certain topics that, Matt, you can kind of control what they're talking about. You've been through it before. You've done your first meet. You've trained to a very high level, even though your meet got canceled. So you've kind of been through all these stages. So you could maybe set up topics each week for everyone to talk about.
Yeah, I definitely think that's a good idea. If we're going to get people to put in the work to be a good mentee, I do believe that there's going to have to be some sort of an incentive for that.
Yeah. And that just might be a way for you guys to kind of keep it on track. And like Nick was saying, where hey, I take full blame for that. That's one of the greatest ideas we had as when we were in the presidency that we never really went through with. And we had a lot of other changes last semester, so I see why, but I think that'd be very important for sure.
Absolutely.
Nick, it just comes down to we just sucked. We sucked.
Yeah, it's not like, we just like got the biggest budget increase in club history or anything.
Yeah, okay.
We couldn't get the stupid mentor-mentee system.
I feel like we did very well with some of our changes that we kind of put in place and really took that next step for the club. And then obviously, I don't think anyone at the beginning of our presidency really expected a global pandemic. So that kind of limited us a little bit the second semester.
Yeah, and man, I was very excited for the spring semester because that's when we usually do like a lot of our big stuff, like apparel or like fundraisers or anything like that.
Just get-togethers as a whole, really, as well.
And then the major like historical event had to happen. Actually, like 5 major historical events had to happen, like back to back to back to back, and put a hold on everything. But
yeah,
I
know. I will say, Matt, you have some big shoes to fill. Like I've been a part of this club since the beginning. When Matt basically gave it everything he got to get. Well, actually, first started out with Dylan Jordan, then Matt, and a lot of people put a lot of good work into this club. And I will say, we have our ups and downs. Everything happens. We've had some issues last year, different things, but as a whole, our club is trending very much towards what I see a lot of these elite level clubs are. So I think you're right, set up to take that next leap into really making us a powerhouse as far as the one of the powerhouses in the nation as far as collegiate clubs. We have the talent. I mean, we got guys. We got like Tony, a couple other very young athletes coming up. So we just got to make sure. I think you're on the right track and can do a lot with it for sure.
Definitely. We're really kind of seeing a fresh team of lifters coming in. I really think the team has a lot of potential to transition into a team, both culturally and in the way that we operate, that could reach a higher level and actually, I'm hoping a couple years down the line, be a legitimate competitor in a big meet like USAPL Collegiate Nationals.
Yeah, I definitely agree. And I think this transition, I think will work out very well for us because as much as Matt Maloney is probably the sole reason why, well, not the sole reason, one of the biggest reasons why this club is where it's at today. With that comes a lot of old ideas that are just kind of hard to get out of your head. And I'm the same way. There's some stuff that probably both of us have thought since the day we started as far as the USPA, different things like that sometimes just need fresh eyes to come in and say, hey, Matt Maloney's did a lot of great work, but now Nick kind of stepped in, changed things up a little bit. We're able to implement some stuff, and now it's turned over to you and really a whole new regime to begin or all over. I think this is the biggest turnover in officers we've ever had, if I'm not mistaken. We've never had such a big change where, it's Lauren Maloney's the only officer coming back at this point, and we have a lot of very young sophomores that are going to come in that can generate a lot of ideas that can really take this forward in the next few years, like Jordan and Tanner. I'd like to have them both on here at some point. So I'm really excited, and we're going to be staying in touch when we can and always help you guys out if you ever need anything.
Yeah, I'm sure I'm going to be coming to you guys pretty frequently.
Yeah.
I'll still be in town, so.
Yeah, Nick's still going to be part of the team. He can be your advisor, kind of like Matt was for us this year.
And by advisor, I'm going to do what Matt did and never show up to anything.
Yeah. Don't care till there's something that you can just put input in and then go ahead and say whatever.
That's what I did this year. Damn.
Yep. But hey, I'm very thankful when he did. But let's jump into the listener questions. We have some great listener questions this week. And the first one is something I think we'll spend a lot of time on because we can all speak about this a little bit because I know Nick and I kind of implemented a system I believe that helped us a lot. But First question is from Seth Todd. Again, thank you for asking questions. We're going to have you on the show very soon to kind of talk about your collegiate club. So he asked, do you have any incentive to get members to come to practice, or do you already have a team of people that want to work and get better? We struggle with members showing up to practice. And what school is Seth involved in again, Nick?
I believe he's the president of Mississippi State.
Okay.
Seth, if you're listening to this, I'm very sorry if I got that wrong, but I'm 95% sure it's Mississippi State.
Yeah, but we definitely want to have Seth on here in the next probably next month, so we'll be reaching out for sure. So, but Matt, as the president, why don't you go ahead and just dive into this first, and then Nick and I can kind of speak of some of the stuff that we've dealt with in the past.
All right, yeah. Well, this past year, I think you guys started pushing things in the right direction with having that points incentive system where members could eventually get a national level meet fee covered by performing towards the top end of the team with regards to their attendance. I think a couple of the big things that I'm going to implement to drive that attendance are going to be, one, having our team compete in 2 meets as a unit. Since I'm hoping to make this transition to the USAPL, we'll have the opportunity to compete together in a meet that works as a qualifier and a meet and the nationals level meet. So I'm just really wanting to get a tight-knit group together for that wants to train and do well and put up the total that it takes to qualify and then be as competitive as we can be. I also want to further expand on that point system that you guys have implemented. I'm thinking of even being a little stricter with it. Given the fact that our members receive a pretty large discount on their pro performance membership for being part of the team, I may implement some sort of mandatory attendance in order to maintain that, because I'd rather have a team of tight-knit lifters that really care about the sport than a super large club where there's very little involvement.
Yeah, and I know this is something
definitely.
that Wes and I tried to tackle on early in the year. And I guess my answer is a little bit like half and half, because when Wes and I sat down and discussed this as officers, along with the other officers, Wes and I had very different schools of thought with what should be done. So admittedly, like, I was trying to push the club into like a very, I wouldn't say serious, but like into a very involved like club where people are showing up every day. They're putting in the work to get better. They want to compete at the biggest meets and they want to be competitive. Whereas Wes just wanted to, and please like correct me, Wes, because I'm not trying to speak for you or anything.
No, I think the main issue was, and again, Seth, this is something you might want to do with your president or just your officers in general, is Nick and I both had in our heads we wanted to push the club into more of a serious, more everyone at team practices, things like that. Nick came in on the side of very, very strict. You need to be here, or else you're not part of the club, which is fine. Like there was a lot of good reason why he wanted that. And my opposement to that was a lot of our club sports federation, where we get our money, they wanted to see a lot of like the size of your club. That was very important to them. So I was very much, we had to kind of find that balance of maybe not being super hard. You have to be here or you're out, and not just letting people come and just get their pro membership or be pieces of crap and not really involved in things like that. So that's something you kind of want to sit down with your officers and figure out, hey, what's your goal? What goal do you want to meet? So our goal was we wanted to improve the quality of our time together at practices. So we kind of took our 2 separate ideas, and Nick and I were able to meet in the middle to develop this point system that you can go ahead and expand on more, Nick. I just kind of wanted to speak like you're saying, since we had 2 different ideas.
Yeah, and so we came up with this point system where there's different, I think there were technically 4 tiers, because there was a tier 0. So tier 0 was you paid your membership, you're in the group chat, that's it, like, good for you. Then tier 1 is like you showed up on average, like a rolling average of 1 time a week. So if you showed up 2 times 1 week and 0 times the next week, that would still be considered an average of 1 a week. And tier 2 was 2 times a week. Tier 3 was 3 times a week. and then we'd have like, double points or, double XP or whatever for certain events. So first tier, I think, or tier 0 just means like you're in the club. You can say you're part of the club, like whatever. Tier 1 is the tier where you start to get like some monetary benefit from the team in some form or another. So like if we had a cookout, we'd pay for you to eat. If we went to like another gym as a team, we'd pay for your day pass. Tier 2, and Wes, like if I'm getting these wrong, like if I'm remembering these wrong.
No, I think you're spot on. Go ahead.
Okay, so tier 2 I think was partial nationals funding, like meet or hotel, but not both. And then nationals funding for a meet requiring a qualifying total, which I think is most major national level meets in federations now. Then tier 3, which is the highest tier, like you showed up 3 times a week on average, and we had 14 practices a week, so you're showing up at least 75% of the time. Like you got everything paid for within our control. So we couldn't pay for food or gas or anything like that, but we could pay for hotels, meet registration, and pretty much any cost we could cover, we would take care of that. And some people took it like way too seriously, admittedly, which is good. But some people were like freaking out about like getting enough points, and I'm like, are you even registered to do a meet right now? And they're like, no, I just like want all the points I can get. So that's pretty cool to see.
I would also like to point out that we incorporate bonus points for different things. So our club is very big on community service, and I would encourage any powerlifting club to get involved with community service. Even if it's not really mandatory for your club sports, go out and help your community. Always give back to your community no matter what. But we would give bonus points for that, bonus points for just showing up to meets and supporting other people. Supporting other members, and then also like spotting and loading a meet or like different things that we would do. You would get bonus points for that, and they differed. I'm pretty sure if you like spot and load a meet, we got something crazy like 5 bonus points. And since this was a running, like you kind of looked at it as like a running week to week, those 5 bonus points could really set someone up for the future. I would say hindsight 2020, looking back, there were a few, this is the first year we did it, and there were a few negative things, not negative, but few things we could have worked on. One, I should have let Nick be a little more strenuous on the standards, and that's something Matt kind of touched on, is I was a little worried about losing too many members and how that would negatively affect us with the club sports. But looking back, I don't know if you would argue this, Nick, but I really think we wouldn't have lost that many people. Like I think everyone kind of met the tier 1. Not too many people didn't. If they did, they were done with the club anyway. So don't be afraid to be a little strenuous with it.
And I would kind of like, I hate to say this because it's just going to like drag on a little bit, but hindsight 2020, I would have gone back and said like, okay, I should have like eased off the gas a little bit and trusted that the members that wanted to be there were going to be there. And that was true. But one like really weird thing, and I'm very happy this happened because, and for reasons I'll explain shortly, was we had a team lift with the University of Pittsburgh. So Pitt came down to us and lifted with us for the day, and it was really fun. And I would recommend like all teams around the country do that with your local teams and stuff. And that wasn't my idea. I totally ripped that idea off of Alec Lord, who was the president of USC, the University of Southern California, last year. And I know teams out west do that, but I would recommend it. Getting off topic. So I promised like double points for that, like double XP weekend, the shit you get hyped up for when you were like 15. And
I still get hyped up for that, man. What are you talking about?
Me and Wes are still on every weekend.
Double XP right now.
Okay, so I promised double XP weekend, and people showed up, and it was really fun. Like we had probably 30 people in the gym that day, like in our corner, and it was really hype. And that was something that kind of told me, it's like, okay, if you incentivize people like this with like really fun shit to do, they will like show up. So I know Wes said like find that middle ground, but like as much as it'd be nice to have like a series team, you got to have fun every once in a while.
Definitely. And one thing, go ahead.
Another thing that I was sort of looking to implement this year is some more of those fun type events, like one continuing the list with other teams, but also maybe trying to bring in some of our local, more elite talent in to work with lifters and maybe sort of demonstrate their strength, I think things like that could also get members to come to the gym.
Yeah, Matt, this is coming from a now alumni, I guess. And I don't think we've ever really had we've kind of grown with this is probably like this will be the 4th year the club has been around, correct? Fourth official year, 4th or 3rd. And we've never really had alumni. One thing I would encourage you guys is kind of do something to bring the alumni back, like a push pull or deadlift event or something like that. Because I know I personally, Matt Maloney probably would. We'll go up there and deadlift a little bit and go out to the bars with everyone after. So maybe that's something you can look at moving forward.
Oh my God. There's nothing more I want in the entire world to out deadlift Sean Redinger one more time.
I mean, we could just do it every year. Keep it rolling. Bring everyone back. All right.
I know he doesn't listen to this, so I'm okay saying that. But if you're listening to this, Sean, actually, I'm not sorry. I know what I said.
Yeah, but I think we'll go on to the next question. Seth, if you have any more questions for us, we can kind of send you a template of what we use. It's definitely something we struggled with, and it'd be cool to kind of help you guys out with that for sure.
And that goes to any college. Or
yeah.
I'd be comfortable sending out whatever we did this year.
Yeah, and we've had a lot of lessons learned from it. I could go on for hours talking about different things. I think we could have improved on this process. But overall, I think it really benefited our club. And it definitely would have if we would have had a whole semester in the spring, but that got cut down a little bit. So I guess our next question from Nick, and we might have already touched on a little bit, but what kind of team culture are you hoping to bring this year?
I'm really just hoping to make our team as a whole more competitive and sort of increase the desire to compete. We've had a lot of members who are involved, but haven't really looked towards doing a meet, and I'd like to get them more involved in the sport. Another big thing I'd like to address is this year, I believe we had a couple lifters that were either kicked off the team or just left due to internal arguments we were having. I'd like for us to have an environment where members can have a little trash talk, sort of push each other to do well by saying, I'm going to out-total you or whatever, while at the same time sort of being able to set them apart and say, listen, dude, you're being an asshole right now. You got to stop. So I'm just hoping to sort of increase our level of unity as a team and our desire to compete at a higher level.
Yeah, definitely.
That's a great idea, yeah.
I think that's a great idea. That's something we did have probably if anything, we had a little bit of trouble with this year. And I don't think it was the end of the world. I don't think it's the way the club's going moving forward. Just had some different situations that came up for sure. But yeah, that's awesome. So we did kind of already touch on this one, but I was going to ask what benefits you believe will come from the West Virginia University powerlifting team transitioning to the USAPL. You've kind of touched on that a little bit, but is there anything you want to add?
Yeah, well, like I mentioned earlier, competing in the USAPL, given that Collegiate Nationals has a qualifier event, allows the team to train closely together for 2 separate meets rather than USPA Nationals. I also believe there's a lot of merit to the fact that the USAPL is considered a drug-free organization, whether you want to debate its drug-free title or not. I really think that brings a lot of potential for us to get further funding from the school, as well as maybe even pick up some outside sponsorships like you guys were mentioning.
Yeah, I can definitely agree with you very much on that as far as the drug-free side of it is, again, I'm a USPA guy myself. I like that. I love the USPA, but when you're looking at as far as the collegiate aspect, that drug testing title or completely drug-free federation, I do think goes a long way when you're looking to request funding and different things. And
thinking in the political side of things, the USAPL feeds into the IPF, which in turn feeds into the IOC. So in terms of making your club look good, competing USAPL means you are competing at the team that answers directly to you're competing for the federation, which indirectly reports to the Olympic Committee, which I think is a very, very good talking point.
Yeah, definitely.
Whether powerlifting it's going to be in the Olympics or not, that's a whole nother story I really don't want to get into today. But
that's a whole episode.
Oh god, we can do like a 5-part series on that and just have different guests on. We just have so much to talk about. But let's shelf that for now. Yeah.
All right, next question. Has Prez ever thought about pursuing a career in male modeling? From Brandon McCoy. I think Brandon wants to see you with half naked, Matt.
I'm gonna be honest, man. He's made his advances, but I gotta say I'm not interested, Brandon. While my looks are one of my greatest assets, I believe my true talent lies elsewhere. So I'm probably gonna stick with the career in industrial engineering.
I don't know, Matt. I hear the whole OnlyFans scene is quite lucrative these days.
That's going to remain a side hustle for the time being.
You've also sent me shirtless pictures, and you can't tell me that hairy chest won't land you like a modeling gig.
The real issue, with that is it's a niche community. So I could bring in some consistent revenue, but I want to make the big bucks one day, and I just think that my niche as a model isn't large enough for that.
Think about the club, Matt. We need another set of kilos.
I'll do it for the team. We're starting a community OnlyFans.
Oh no. Okay.
And then we'll wrap up with a statement from Ricky. He said, "No question. Just hope Mark finds a store that sells new ankles."
I'd enjoy that if I could find one of those. Having small calves has been a constant struggle in my career, and I think it's really going to be one of the biggest obstacles to my presidency. These ankles really don't call for respect. I was doing a bodyweight squat the other day at pro, and I looked over in the mirror, and I realized that my thighs looked a solid 3.5 times bigger than my calves. That's an issue.
I'm the same way. That's why you'll never catch me wearing ankle socks.
And Benji always asks me why I wear sweatpants to the gym, and that's his answer.
That's his answer. All right, man. So thank you for coming on the show. It's definitely been a good one, and you were able to bring a lot of great information. So why don't you let everyone know where they can find you out on Instagram?
I keep a lifting log right now at MMCGU42. That's really where I keep all my powerlifting stuff consolidated to. I will warn you, when you look up my name, there are several imposter accounts with different numbers. So look for the 42 at the end if you want to find my lifting log, or you might see some weird stuff that was fakely posted in my name.
I don't know. MMCGU62 is pretty good.
Check it out if you're ever really bored.
Yeah, go ahead and follow all those other accounts while you're at it. Okay, Nick, so where can everyone find you at?
Yeah, you can find me on my personal Instagram at notasquid99. One of these days, I will reveal the origins of that name. And if you want to follow my lifting nonsense, that is at squidlifts99.
Yeah, and you can find me at westmcknight7. Hey, and while you're on Instagram, go ahead and give our podcast Instagram a follow at Kilo Podcast. And you can find us on Spotify and Apple Podcasts. And hopefully, we'll see, by the end of the week, Nick and I plan to have a YouTube going with all our past episodes, and then some new content that we're not going to talk a whole lot about now, but just keep an eye out for that for sure. So,
it's premium content.
It should be premium content, but we're going to try to expand on kind of what we're doing here. And we both have some prep coming up, so we're going to give you guys a look into that. And hopefully you guys enjoy. But thank you, everyone, for listening, and we'll see you next week.